My 16-year-old daughter lost 22 pounds in 1 month. She said she was just eating healthier and begged me not to worry. Last night, I found her diary hidden under her mattress. When I read what her boyfriend had been forcing her to do, I felt my knees give out. I did not wait. I dialed 911 and prayed my call wasn't too late to save her life. My name is Caroline Rhodes. I live in a quiet neighborhood where people wave when they pass by, and the biggest excitement most days is the mail truck arriving early. I have 2 children. My son Ethan is 19 and in his first year of college. He is strong, protective, and the kind of young man who still calls me every night to say goodnight. My daughter Ava is 16. She has always been gentle, artistic, and shy. She paints sunsets on her bedroom walls, sings while brushing her hair, and hugs me every morning before school. She was the kind of daughter every mother dreams of. We were a close family, even after my divorce from their father 5 years ago. The house stayed filled with laughter, noise, and the smell of pancakes on Saturday mornings. When Ava told me she had her first crush, I thought it was sweet and harmless. His name was Logan Price, a popular senior at school. He came from a well-off family, drove a new car, and every girl seemed to admire him. When he first visited our home, he smiled politely and complimented my cooking. Ava seemed happy around him, glowing in a way I had never seen before. As a mother, I was relieved. I thought she had found someone who appreciated her kindness. Slowly, things began to change. Ava stopped having breakfast with us. She started skipping dinner, claiming she had already eaten or wasn't hungry. I noticed her pushing food around her plate without taking a bite. Her clothes became loose. Her cheeks thinned out. When I told her I was worried, she smiled and said, "Mom, I'm just trying to be healthier. Logan is helping me stay motivated." I tried to be supportive and not overreact. I told myself that teenagers go through phases. Then her mood began to shift. She stopped painting. She avoided group activities. She spent hours in her room texting and anxiously waiting for her phone to light up. She looked at herself in the mirror with disappointment, no matter how thin she became. Her best friend Jenna stopped coming over. When I asked Ava why, she said they had grown apart, but her voice trembled when she said it. One night, I walked past her room and saw her sitting on the floor, staring at the scale. She was crying silently. I opened the door and reached for her, but she wiped her face quickly and said, "I'm fine. Please don't make this a big deal." As her mother, I could feel a door closing between us, and I did not know why. A few days later, she fainted at school. The nurse called me in a panic. When I got to the hospital, the doctor explained that Ava's body was shutting down from severe malnutrition. He warned me that if she lost any more weight, her heart could be at risk. Ava stayed silent, eyes empty, refusing to answer questions. Something in her expression chilled me. This was not just dieting. This was fear. When I brought her home from the hospital, she went straight to her room and locked the door. That night, I made a decision that changed everything. I searched her room for any clue about what was happening. That is when I found the diary. Before I move into the next part of this story, comment where you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe if you believe every parent should hear this warning before it's too late. The moment I held that diary in my hands, I could feel my heartbeat pounding against my ribs. A part of me didn't want to open it. I wanted to believe my daughter was just dieting, that it was a typical teenage phase blown out of proportion by worry. But another part of me knew the truth was hiding in plain sight, waiting to be faced. I sat at the edge of her bed, the weight of silence pressing against the walls, and opened to the most recent page. The handwriting was shaky, as if written in fear. The first line made me gasp. It said, "If I fail this week, Logan said I don't deserve him. He said girls who can't control themselves don't deserve love." I felt something inside me break. This was not a diet. This was control. I turned the pages and the entries grew darker. She wrote about how Logan had praised her every time she lost weight, sending messages like, "Proud of you, baby. You're finally becoming the girl I deserve." But when she didn't meet his target, he would withdraw affection, ignore her for hours, or send a single cold message. "You really don't want to disappoint me again, right?" Ava described how she started skipping meals not to be healthy, but to avoid losing him. Each line reflected a trap tightening around her. She mentioned that Logan had convinced her that other girls wanted him, that she needed to win by showing she was the most disciplined. It was psychological warfare disguised as teenage romance. One specific entry stopped me cold. Ava wrote, "He said if I gain even 2 pounds back, he will send the pictures to everyone. He took them for us, but now he says they belong to him, and if I betray him, he'll ruin me." My hands shook as I read those words. I couldn't breathe. My daughter was not dieting. She was being blackmailed by someone she trusted. He had turned her love into a weapon against her, and she had been suffering in silence to protect herself from humiliation. I closed the diary and forced myself to think clearly. Anger surged through me, but I could not afford to be reckless. When I walked downstairs, I found Ava curled up on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her fragile body. Her eyes were glassy, distant. I sat beside her and gently asked, "Are you okay?" She nodded, but tears slipped down her cheeks. "Mom," she whispered, "if I get through this week, he said we could finally be official, that everyone at school will know I'm his girl." The desperation in her voice tore at my heart. I asked, "What if you don't get through this?" She didn't answer. She stared at the carpet, gripping the edge of the blanket so tightly her knuckles turned white. That silence told me everything. She was not afraid of failing a diet. She was afraid of what he would do to her. She was afraid of losing her reputation, her friends, her identity. To her teenage mind, this wasn't about health. It was about survival. The next day, I kept her home from school, claiming she needed rest. While she slept, I contacted her doctor and scheduled an emergency evaluation. When Ava woke, she begged me not to involve anyone else. "Logan said I can fix this on my own," she cried. "He said if I get help, he'll never speak to me again, and everyone will think I'm crazy." Her voice cracked with fear, and she clutched her phone like it was her lifeline. Then her phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. It read, "Clock's ticking. I'll know if you cheat." She grabbed the phone quickly, but I had already seen it. Her hands began to shake uncontrollably. Her breathing turned rapid. I placed my hand over hers and said firmly, "No relationship should make you feel this way." She pulled away and said, "You don't understand. This is my fault. I made him mad." That was the moment I realized how deep the manipulation had gone. She wasn't just scared of him. She believed she deserved his punishment. That kind of thinking doesn't come from insecurity. It comes from emotional abuse. The diary entries became my roadmap of her suffering. They described late-night weigh-ins, where he would FaceTime her and force her to step on the scale. If the number wasn't low enough, he would hang up without speaking. She wrote that she cried quietly every night, so I would not hear. I knew this had escalated beyond anything I could handle alone. My daughter's life was in danger. Her mind was under someone else's control. And in that moment, the truth hit me with terrifying clarity. If I didn't act, I could lose her, not just emotionally, but physically. I folded the diary, placed it in my purse, and made a silent promise. This was no longer a mother worrying about her daughter's choices. This was a mother preparing for battle against the person who was destroying her child from the inside out. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I didn't sleep much, but I had clarity. I was done being a scared parent, watching from the sidelines. I had evidence in my hands, Ava's diary, and I had a daughter who was slipping away from me more each day. The situation was no longer about privacy or respecting boundaries. This was life and death. I walked downstairs to find Ava already in the kitchen, standing by the sink with a glass of water in her hand. Her skin looked pale, her eyes empty, as if she had aged years overnight. When she saw me, she tensed, as if expecting me to scold her. Instead, I spoke gently. "I know what's going on with Logan." She froze. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Tears filled her eyes instantly. She didn't ask what I knew. She already understood. "Please don't do anything," she begged, her voice trembling. "If you tell anyone, it will only make it worse. He said this is my last week to prove myself. After that, everything will be okay." Her words broke my heart because I realized she was clinging to the hope that her abuser would reward her one day. She wasn't trying to lose weight for herself. She was fighting for his conditional approval. She was fighting to keep him from exposing her. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away as if my touch burned her. "If you ruin everything," she cried, "he'll show my pictures to everyone. I won't survive that." Hearing my daughter talk like that ignited something inside me I didn't know I had, a fierce, protective fire. I had already lost her emotionally, and if I stayed silent any longer, I could lose her physically. I told her softly but firmly, "Ava, this is not your fault. You are in danger, and I am going to protect you whether you like it or not." She shook her head violently, crying harder, and ran upstairs. I heard her door slam, followed by muffled sobs. For a moment, I stood in the hallway, holding my breath, listening to the sound of my daughter breaking down, and then a quiet strength rose in me. I wiped my tears and picked up the phone. I called our family doctor, Dr. Lane, and explained everything. She told me I'd made the right decision and urged me to bring Ava in immediately for evaluation. When I went upstairs to tell Ava, I found her staring out the window with her phone pressed against her chest as though she were guarding a weapon. I said, "We're leaving in 10 minutes. She didn't argue this time. Something in her had shifted. It was as if she realized she didn't have the strength to fight alone anymore. At the doctor's office, Ava's blood pressure was dangerously low. Dr. Lane sat across from us and said firmly, "Your heart is showing signs of stress. If this continues, you could suffer cardiac arrest." Ava stared at the floor, silent. I expected her to panic or deny it, but she seemed almost numb. Dr. Lane asked her gently if she felt in control of her own life. That was when Ava finally spoke. With a shaky voice, she admitted, "I feel like I belong to him. If I stop doing what he says, I don't know who I am." The honesty of her words terrified me. This wasn't teenage rebellion or insecurity. This was psychological captivity. After the appointment, I told Ava we would be going straight home and that I would be calling Logan's parents and the school. She reacted instantly. "You can't," she cried, grabbing my arm. "He'll destroy me." Her voice wasn't angry. It was terrified. She wasn't trying to protect Logan. She was trying to protect herself from whatever Logan had threatened to do. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just emotional manipulation. It was criminal. When we arrived home, I noticed something strange. Logan's car was parked a few houses down the street. My heart stopped. Had he been watching us? Ava noticed too and froze. Her breathing quickened. She whispered, "He knows." That's when I made the decision that changed everything. I locked the front door, pulled out my phone, and dialed 911. Ava dropped to her knees, sobbing, saying, "Please, Mom, don't do this. You don't understand what will happen if you involve the police." I knelt beside her and lifted her chin so she would look at me. "What will happen," I said, "is that this ends today. You will not be alone another minute. I will not let him take another piece of you." For the first time, her eyes softened. She didn't agree. She didn't speak. But she didn't fight me anymore either. She leaned into me and cried quietly as I continued the call. That call was the moment I chose action over fear. I had stepped into my role not just as a mother, but as the shield between my daughter and the darkness that had been consuming her. And because of that decision, everything that happened next would change our lives forever. The police arrived faster than I expected. The moment I ended the call, I heard the low rumble of an approaching patrol car. Through the window, I saw Logan's vehicle slowly rolling forward, as if he had sensed danger. I stepped outside onto the porch, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Logan's car came to a sudden stop, and his eyes met mine through the windshield. There was a flash of something in his expression. Not guilt, not shame, but arrogance. He stepped out, adjusting his jacket, standing tall like he still believed he held power over us. "Where's Ava?" he asked, his tone cold and demanding, as though I owed him an answer. Before I could respond, the police cruiser pulled up behind him. 2 officers stepped out. One approached me calmly, asking if I was the caller. I nodded and pointed to Logan. "That's him?" I said. Logan laughed under his breath. "For what? Existing?" His voice dripped with mockery. The other officer asked him to step aside for questioning. Logan raised his voice, shouting, Ava belongs with me. She needs me. And then, as if rehearsed, he turned toward the house and shouted, Ava, come out here now. His tone sent a chill down my spine. It was not the voice of a concerned boyfriend. It was the command of someone who believed he owned her. Inside the house, I heard Ava gasp. She appeared in the doorway, pale and trembling. Her legs were weak, but she stood, clutching the wall for balance. Logan's face softened instantly when he saw her, his expression shifting into a fake, gentle smile. You know you're not supposed to be here, he said softly, trying to sound loving. You promised me you wouldn't let her control you. Ava's lips quivered. Tears streamed down her face. She whispered, I don't want to do this anymore. That one sentence changed everything. Logan's body stiffened. His smile vanished. He took a step toward her, but Officer Miller stepped between them. Sir, back away, the officer said. Logan lifted his chin in defiance. She's my girlfriend. She's coming with me. His voice had turned dark again. Ava shook her head weakly and clung to the doorway. I stepped in front of her instinctively. She's a minor, I said, and she is not going anywhere with you. Logan glared at me. You just ruined her life, he said. You think you've won, but you haven't. Everything is already saved. One wrong move and everybody at school will see what she sent me. That was when the second officer pulled out a document from his folder. We already have access to your phone records, he announced. A search warrant was granted this morning, based on multiple complaints from other families. We know about the videos. We know about your threats. Logan's confidence faltered. He took a step back. His eyes darted to his car, as if calculating whether to run. This is ridiculous, he said. They all wanted to do it. They begged to prove themselves. The officers didn't react to his excuses. That was when Ava let out a sob that echoed across the entire porch. You said if I didn't lose enough weight, you would make everyone see me as disgusting, she cried. You made me hate myself. In that moment, everything became undeniable. Logan's mask of control shattered. The officers moved in to restrain him. He struggled, shouting, You can't do this. I'm the victim here. Girls lie all the time, Officer Miller said firmly. You are under arrest for coercion, distribution threats, and psychological abuse of a minor. As they cuffed him, Logan's voice grew desperate. Ava, tell them the truth. Tell them you love me. Ava shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. That wasn't love. That was fear. As Logan was placed in the back of the patrol car, I turned to Ava and wrapped my arms around her. She collapsed into me, sobbing uncontrollably. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to be held. The weight of what she had endured poured out of her in waves of grief, relief, and release. Sirens began to fade as the patrol car drove away, taking with it the darkness that had controlled our lives. But the climax was not just about his arrest. It was the moment my daughter chose life, chose herself. The paramedics on scene evaluated Ava and determined she needed immediate medical attention. As she lay on the stretcher, she reached for my hand. Mom, she said, her voice trembling but clear. I thought he was the only person who would ever love me. I squeezed her hand and said, Real love doesn't destroy you. It heals you, and you are going to heal. As the ambulance doors closed, I saw a spark in her eyes. Not joy yet, not peace, but something better. A beginning. The hours following the ambulance ride felt like a blur, but for the first time in months, the air around me did not feel suffocating. At the hospital, doctors administered IV fluids, monitored Ava's heart rate, and began a careful treatment plan to stabilize her condition. They told me she was severely malnourished and on the edge of organ damage, but with time and proper care, she could make a full recovery. Hearing the word recovery was enough to bring tears to my eyes. It meant there was a path forward. It meant that the nightmare we had been silently trapped in had a way out. Later that evening, when Ava woke up, she reached for both my hands and whispered, Promise me I never have to see him again. I looked straight into her eyes and said, You never will. You are safe, and you are free. Over the next few days, Ava began therapy sessions with a licensed trauma counselor who specialized in emotional abuse and eating disorders. At first, she struggled to talk. She cried often. She blamed herself. She said things like, "I should have seen the signs and I let it happen." But with every session, she began to understand the truth. Abuse is not the victim's fault. She wasn't weak. She was targeted. She wasn't obsessed with perfection. She was manipulated into believing her worth depended on meeting someone else's demands. The more she spoke, the more she found strength in reclaiming her voice. One day, she said to her therapist, "He made me hate myself, but I'm ready to learn how to love myself again." Hearing those words filled me with hope. Meanwhile, the investigation into Logan deepened. The police discovered evidence on his devices showing that he had been targeting multiple girls, preying on their insecurities, isolating them emotionally, and controlling them through threats. Several families came forward with similar stories, but until Ava's case, none had enough evidence to take legal action. Ava's diary, the messages, and her statements became the key pieces of evidence that exposed his pattern of abuse. The prosecutor contacted me personally and said, "Your daughter's courage likely saved many other girls." For the first time, Ava was no longer just a victim in her own eyes. She was part of something bigger. She was part of justice. As days turned into weeks, our home slowly began to feel warm again. Ava returned to eating regular meals with us at the dinner table. Ethan took a leave from college to be home for a while. He helped Ava build a routine, morning walks, painting sessions, even yoga classes designed for healing and body positivity. It wasn't easy. Recovery is not a straight path. There were days when Ava cried and said she still heard his voice in her head, telling her she wasn't enough. There were nights when she woke up shaking from nightmares. But each time, I was there to remind her, that chapter is over. You are no longer surviving. You are now healing. We decided to remove everything from her room that reminded her of that dark time. Together, we painted the walls a soft peach color she loved. We donated the clothes that no longer represented who she wanted to be. We replaced her scale with a small vase of flowers. She began painting again. Her first painting after recovery was of a sunrise emerging over a calm ocean. When she showed it to me, she said, "This is how I want my future to feel." Months later, Ava stood in front of a support group of teens and shared her story publicly for the first time. She spoke not as a broken girl, but as a survivor. She said, "I thought silence kept me safe, but silence kept me trapped. Speaking up saved my life." The room erupted in applause, and I knew then that the most painful chapter of our lives had transformed into a testimony that could save others. As a mother, I learned something too. Love is not just warmth and care. Sometimes love is fierce. It is the strength to stand between your child and danger, even when your child doesn't understand. Love is not about protecting their feelings. It is about protecting their life. Logan was found guilty on multiple charges, including coercion, distribution threats, and exploitation of a minor. He will spend years behind bars. But the real victory was not his punishment. It was Ava's freedom. She no longer wakes up afraid. She no longer measures her worth by numbers on a scale. She now knows what love is supposed to feel like: safe, kind, and healing. I often think back to the moment I opened that diary. It shattered me, but it also awakened a part of me I didn't know existed, a warrior. And every parent watching this needs to know this truth. Your child may not tell you they are in danger. Sometimes the biggest warning signs are silence, withdrawal, or a forced smile. Trust your instincts. Don't be afraid to act. You are their first line of defense. Ava and I now walk into each new day with gratitude, knowing that healing is not about forgetting what happened. It is about choosing what happens next. If this story opened your eyes or touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring life-saving stories to more families.